What's that story you've never been able to tell? In 6th grade one night I was like, I really don't feel like going to school tomorrow, so I looked up how to get a fever. I found a tutorial that said to take a bath at the hottest temperature your bathtub will go, and then stay up all night. I decided to try it, and I started the water for a steaming hot bath. It stung to get in it, and I somehow survived it for 30 minutes. When I was getting out I felt dizzy, and then, I fell on the floor, and had a seizure. I woke up, and saw the blinding ceiling lights of the bathroom, and the first thing I thought was, am I dead? And then I threw up in the toilet next to me, and had a migraine for the night, and later found out I got first-degree burns. So long story short, don't do that. Around 42 years ago, my little brother was playing with matches, and set the woods on fire, burned about 10 acres. Everyone assumed that it was me smoking in the woods and I just let it be me. I took the blame, and the ass whooping. Because dad was kinda rough on the ass whoopings when he was mad, and I didn't want my little brother to have to take it. Being that dad got a little carried away this time, broke my arm. We've just never told anyone the truth. When I was 17, I worked at a grocery store with a guy named Brian, normal guy, mid-20s, lil chub. Didn't really think much of him. One day he tells me about how he lives in an apartment by himself, and that his neighbors are absolutely crazy. Like they would yell at him to be quiet, pound against the wall to get him to shut up, even though he wouldn't be doing anything. He would sneeze, and his neighbors would scream at the top of their lungs from next door. It was that bad. TBH, I didn't really care much when he was telling me this. I just wanted to go home, and not work anymore. Couple days go by, and I noticed that Brian wasn't showing up anymore. Whatever, didn't think much of that either. A month or two goes by, and he finally shows back up to work. So, being the nice friend I am, I asked him where he's been. He tells me he was actually fired because he was in the hospital. I didn't think that was a valid reason to fire someone. But what do I know? I didn't comment on that. I asked him why he was in the hospital, and he told me it was for personal reasons. I tell him it was good having him back, and carried on with my day. Fast forward a couple days to me talking to another coworker who was good friends with Brian. He says, did you hear what happened to Brian? Yeah, he was in the hospital, and was fired or something. Do you know why though? No, he said it was personal. So this is what happened a couple months ago before Brian disappeared. He was at home by himself, when his neighbors, surprise, start yelling at him through the walls for being too loud. Brian, telling himself I've had enough, decides to call the police, and have them deal with it. The police arrived, and started talking to the neighbors for quite some time. Hours go by with the police, and neighbors. So he calls the police again to ask what's taking so long. The police respond with, we left like an hour and a half ago. Turns out that the neighbors were never yelling at him. In fact, they were never there. Brian was schizophrenic, and was hearing voices in his head. He had to go to a mental hospital for a month. In 6th grade, we had this paper we had to write. I forget what the subject was. I decided to procrastinate a lot. Then the day it was due rolled around, and I had nothing. We had to read our papers out loud in front of the class. I was totally prepared to take the 0, but then I realized he wasn't actually taking the papers we used. So I decided to go up to the front of the class with a blank sheet of paper, and improvise. I ended up getting an 80. One of the first times I invited my girlfriend to spend the night at my college apartment, I went to bed early. We're both gamers, but I'm an early bird, and she's a night owl. She reassured me I could go to sleep without her because, little did I know, she had plans to unlock Toad, Toadette, and the special cup in Mario Kart DD for the GameCube. My apartment complex had very strict parking. There were only 2 parking passes for me, and my roommate, but I encouraged my girlfriend to park in the lot anyway because I'd never seen a friend get towed in the couple of years I lived there. She really didn't want to get towed though, so I promised to pay if she got her car impounded. So I go to bed while she plays Mario Kart all night. Little did I realize she's an absolute freak at the game. I wake up early in the morning to find her passed out from a night of gaming. I fire up the GameCube to play some Mario Kart with breakfast. Not aware she unlocked almost everything in the game, I proudly proclaim, "You got towed." Barely awake she responds, "I got towed? Yeah, you got towed last night while I was sleeping. I can't believe it. I got towed? Yeah, don't you remember?" She frantically checks behind the blinds to look outside at the parking lot. "I didn't get towed." "Yeah, you got towed, and Toadette last night?" One of our best moments for sure. I started doing one of those 5K running apps. On this app, the trainer is named Erin. She coaches you through each training session. I've never been a runner, and now can do a solid 5K. But anyway, Erin told me that I've got to have a mantra. Something I can repeat to myself when I want to give up. Her mantra is "You're strong, Erin. Be strong." I could never come up with anything better, so now my mantra is "You're strong, Erin. Be strong." My name isn't even close to Erin, but it doesn't feel right using my own name at this point. I'm surprised how often I want to give up on things, and automatically think "You're strong, Erin. Be strong." Edit. Guys, I am so overwhelmed and touched by these replies. Gold, and silver, and wholesome? Oh my, we are all strong Erins. The time my mum needed to go back into the house to get a scarf. Because of this we were held back, and missed a bus by 10 seconds. That bus then crashed into a bridge at very high speed because the bus driver had mental health problems. It is the closest I have ever been to death. I will never complain about my mum going back to get a scarf in my life again. When I was just a boy, I was touched when I was getting my hair cut. My father had to make a quick run to the ATM, so we were alone. I never realized it affected me that much, and honestly didn't even think about it for years until I drove by the place where the barber shop used to be, and just felt immense stress. I would never tell my father. He has always been insecure about whether or not he's been a good father to me. This would make him hate himself. Edit. Thanks to everyone who gave me support just now, and to everyone else who told their stories below. You're so brave, and I'm always here for you. I have never came out with this story to anyone except for one close friend. Everyone who supported me here has me one step closer to talking more about what happened to me. It is not mind-blowing or anything of the sort, which is why I never told it, but when I first started getting sick, and couldn't move around the house like usual, my cat would yell at me for 2 minutes until I sat down. He would proceed to purr furiously over my stomach, which was hurting, for about 10 minutes at a time. He would chirp at me if I tried to get up beforehand, and keep bumping my leg as I walked past if I never sat down. Little did I know that he was trying to heal my cancer, that was growing into the muscle by that point. He's a little Siamese mix, and he is very vocal, and I appreciate his little squeaks of support. He is a very good boy. Edit. Wow, thank you so much for the bless up, gold, and silver. I have never received anything like this on my posts here on Reddit. During this quarantine, I wish everyone the best of health, and that you can manage all of your family's needs. I will be going through, and answering all of the replies now. I had a chat with one of the most notorious pedophiles in my country. It was odd. He spoke in a way that made it seem like he was my age. I was 7. He eventually tried to trick me into touching his dick by buying me a hot dog and a soda. I only declined, and bailed because I was low-key offended that he put mustard on the hot dog he was offering me. When I was 17, I was raped by the boy who lived up the street. When I finally got myself home, I went to my dad, and he yelled at me for not being home earlier. My phone got taken away, and I was sent to my room. I couldn't even shower. I could never bring myself to tell him after that. I still never talk about it with anyone. I moved to the UK from Zimbabwe when I was 4. The first few years my parents spent their whole time trying to settle down. By the time I was 8, they realized we had never been to London. So on a hot June day we went into London. We went to the aquarium, Covent Garden, to see all the performers on the London Eye. It was a good day. To end the day we went to Buckingham Palace. I was tired, so I was resting my head against the bars asking all the questions you'd expect from an 8-year-old. After a while my parents said it was time to go. I pushed away from the bars, and then felt the cold steel against the back of my ears. I hadn't noticed my head had slipped through. I panicked. A crowd gathered. I'm probably in many a family photo album. Even a horse guard came to see what the commission was about. Bet he wasn't expecting a child with his head stuck. By then I had accepted this as my new home, but I couldn't figure out how I'd go to sleep with a spike on the floor. Luckily an old lady had a tub of Vaseline in her handbag, and my dad was able to pull me out with my head smothered in Vaseline. I've told this on Reddit before, but never in person. So I was at a water park with a girl I had a huge crush on, and some of our mutual friends. I'm not a big fan of rides. She had been trying to talk me into going on one all day, and I finally agreed to try out this one really intense looking slide. Basically you go down the slide while sitting on this big inflatable thing. And it was for 2 people, so naturally I got paired up with the girl I had a crush on. We both climbed into the inflatable, which had these little handles on it for you to hold on to when you went down. When we went down the slide, it was way faster than I thought it would be. I accidentally let go of one of the handles, tried to grab it again, and ended up grabbing her hand instead by accident. I was really embarrassed, but she put her other hand on top of mine until we reached the bottom. I guess she thought I was scared, which is also kinda embarrassing, but it was a nice moment. She later went on to be my first kiss about 6 months later, and we're still close friends today. Back when I was in high school, I wanted to approach this girl on a bus on my way to school. She was really hot, and I knew I'd regret it if I didn't approach her. There was one big problem. There was a middle-aged lady seated next to her, and I couldn't talk to this girl with the lady right next to her. I had to think of a quick way to get rid of the lady. I then woke up from my seat, slowly walked to the row they were seated, and calmly asked the lady, "Excuse me ma'am, could you please let me sit next to my sister?" Turns out the lady was the girl's mom. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Western Samoa. One weekend several of my fellow volunteers and I went camping on this tiny private island. On the first or second night, we made a bonfire, and all got super drunk, then went skinny dipping. The water was only about chest deep, warm, and still. There was no light pollution, so the stars were blazingly bright. We also inadvertently kicked up some bioluminescence, filling the water with stars. Tipsily floating naked in the warm sea, completely surrounded on all sides by stars and close friends, is one of my most beautiful and euphoric memories. My aunt was forced to hand her kids over to her alcoholic ex for a weekend visitation, but she was terrified he'd hurt them, so she sent me with them. I was 7 or maybe 8, they were 2 and 4. I thought myself so much older, and decided it was the responsible thing to do, so I went. While at his apartment, he got wasted, and called my aunt, and told her he was going to throw them off his very high balcony. They were asleep. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat up all night, no small feat at that age, to make sure he didn't kill my baby cousins. Nobody knows. I think about it daily, and wonder if it's why I have panic disorder. I wish there were better ways to protect kids in separations. Edit. I can't believe all the love. Holy crap, you guys are awesome. I consider deleting this in case my cousins ever saw it, but thankfully, I don't think they could possibly remember this. Thanks for my first ever awards. I found out when I was 28 that my dad's side of the family had been in the witness protection program my entire life, and that their names were not what I had been told. When I was about 14, I found a slingshot in the woods. It was a pretty good slingshot that must have cost a fair bit, as it had a metal frame and a thick rubber sling. One day my friend and I were on top of a hill out in the countryside, and a jogger came running out of the nearby tree line. He was some distance away, and below us. Without putting a lot of thought into it, I shot a stone just above his head. The rock went exactly where I wanted it to, but if there was wind, or my aim was off, or 1,000 other factors, I would have seriously screwed that jogger up. I muse on that at least once a week. I never see my friend, and we haven't spoken about it since it happened. My mom probably has factitious disorder. She used to gather my siblings and I together to announce she has insert cancer or deadly disease here, and then make us cry and hug her. She has ruined so many of my major life events to rant about herself and all of her illnesses. I haven't called to check in on her with everything that is going on, because I do not want to hear her hours-long spew of disease and sickness, because I always think she is lying. She may actually be at serious risk of death from COVID-19, and I still don't want to hear her talk about it. She could die, and I think I would feel relief. Edit. My mom has never been officially diagnosed with any mental illness. I don't mean to sound like an armchair psychologist. She thinks psychology is nonsense and refuses to seek help. She has purposely hurt herself for attention, and she is or was heavily addicted to painkillers for a long time now. Edit 2. Thank you for all the kindness and stories of shared experience. Be safe in all of this craziness. When I was in kindergarten, I fell asleep on the bus to school. No one woke me up. I wake up eventually, and the bus is empty. I panic, as any 5-year-old does, and run to the front of the bus and try the door. It's locked. It was parked in a KFC parking lot, so people were coming in and out of the building. I started wailing with terror, banging on the glass doors, snot pouring down my face and into my mouth as people walk by and point at me. They mumbled and got into their car and left. By the time the bus driver finally came back out with her chicken meal, the entire door was covered in my slobber and tears. She instructed me how to open the closed door so she didn't have to put her meal down. I was still freaking out obviously, and didn't understand. So she sighed, put her food down, and finally opened the door, and asked me what was I doing there. She called the school, and drove me there, still covered in snot. I remember walking into my class with everyone standing in a line, and hugging me one at a time. After that day, they made a rule for all bus drivers to get up and walk the bus front back to make sure no kids get left sleeping. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.